They say history repeats itself, but when it comes to food, let's hope it doesn't. Once upon a time in mid-century kitchens across America, dishes were molded, jellied, frosted, and stuffed in ways that would make today's chefs drop their spatulas. From mayonnaise on bananas to hot dog sushi rolls, these recipes weren't just meals. They were culinary mysteries, sometimes miracles, sometimes monstrous. Tonight, we're diving deep into the vaults of vintage cookbooks and community pamphlets to uncover 30 of the most bizarre, forgotten, and mind-bending recipes ever to grace a dinner table. Some were proudly served at baby showers and bridge clubs. Others should have never left the test kitchen. So buckle up, because by the end, you'll either be fascinated, horrified, or oddly hungry. If you're a fan of food history, retro oddities, or just love a good story with your snacks, don't forget to like this video, share it with a brave friend, and subscribe for more forgotten food adventures. Alright, let's get weird. Let's begin with a true gelatin-era masterpiece, the tuna mousse crown. Straight out of a 1950s cookbook, this shimmering seafood wreath wasn't just a dish, it was a statement. Housewives of the time believed in showing off their culinary creativity, and what better way than to mold tuna fish into a royal crown shape? The recipe called for canned tuna, mayonnaise, lemon juice, cream cheese, and gelatin, all whipped together and pressed into a ring mold. Once chilled to a quivering perfection, it was inverted onto a platter and crowned with a center of bright green peas, or maybe piped deviled eggs if you were feeling fancy. Now, imagine walking into a cocktail party and seeing that on the table. Back then, it was a showstopper. Today, most folks would stare at it, unsure whether to eat it or call an exorcist. But here's the thing. This dish was never meant to be casual. It screamed elegance for its time. In an era where convenience foods met post-war domestic pride, jellied dishes like this became a symbol of control and order. Housewives molded the chaos of daily life, quite literally, into chilled perfection. While the taste might not win over modern palates, the tuna mousse crown stands as a tribute to the fearless food experimentation of mid-century America. It reminds us of a time when presentation was king and gelatin ruled the kitchen. Some called it classy, others quietly pushed it aside. But it earned its place in the pantheon of unforgettable appetizers. And guess what? This is just the beginning. Stick around. The next dish involves meatloaf, frosting, and enough confusion to last a lifetime. Don't forget to hit like, drop a comment if you've seen or tasted this curious crown, and subscribe for more edible time travel. You've heard of birthday cakes, but in the 1950s, someone decided meatloaf deserved frosting too. Enter the frosted meatloaf loaf, a savory surprise that left guests confused, amused, and occasionally impressed. At first glance, it looks like a classic sheet cake, maybe something you'd bring to a church potluck. But one slice in reveals the truth. It's ground beef, not buttercream. Here's how it worked. You'd bake a standard meatloaf, ground beef, breadcrumbs, onions, the usual suspects. Once cooled slightly, you'd frost the entire thing with a thick, smooth layer of mashed potatoes. But not just slathered. No, this was an art. Housewives piped, swirled, and even added parsley sprinkles to give it the full cake illusion. Some even dyed the potatoes pastel pink or green, using food coloring to match their table decor. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was a performance. Frosted meatloaf became a centerpiece at bridge clubs, baby showers, and ladies' luncheons. It was comfort food disguised as elegance. And to be fair, it wasn't all bad. The creamy potatoes paired well with the savory loaf. But if you were expecting dessert, that first bite was like a culinary prank. Why did this trend ever exist? Simple. Post-war America was obsessed with appearances. Presentation was everything, and the frosted meatloaf loaf delivered drama on a dime. It made an ordinary weeknight dinner feel like an occasion, even if it terrified the kids. Today, it lives on in vintage cookbooks and the occasional ironic dinner party. But back then, it was served with pride, a little meat, a little mystery, and a whole lot of mashed flair. And just when you thought it couldn't get any stranger, wait until you see what they did with bananas and mayonnaise. Now, brace yourself, because this next one sounds like a dare, but it was served with a straight face. Banana and mayonnaise appetizer slices. Yes, you heard that right. Bananas and mayonnaise. In mid-20th century America, this combo wasn't a mistake. It was a delicacy in many Southern households and proudly included in church luncheon spreads and homemaker club meetings. The logic? Pairing sweet and creamy fruit with rich, tangy mayo created a balanced, high-energy snack, at least, according to vintage nutrition pamphlets. Here's how it worked. Ripe bananas were sliced into thick rounds or halved lengthwise, then lovingly topped with a dollop of mayonnaise. Sometimes a sprinkle of chopped peanuts or shredded lettuce was added for presentation. Other versions drizzled them with paprika or placed each piece neatly on a Ritz cracker. It might sound wild now, but at the time, bananas were considered an exotic fruit, a luxury once reserved for the upper class. Pairing them with mayonnaise, a symbol of modern refrigeration and progress, felt like a perfect blend of New World comfort. For many kids in the 1940s and 50s, this was a lunchbox surprise or a quick after-school snack. For adults, it was a conversation starter, the kind of thing you brought to a party if you wanted to seem creative or slightly unhinged. Some folks swore by the combo. Others couldn't get past the texture clash. But whether you loved it or lost your appetite, it definitely left a lasting impression and earned its spot in the Forgotten Food Hall of Fame. And here's the kicker. Some recipes took it further with Jell-O molds and crushed pineapple. But we'll save that horror for later. If this blew your mind, or your stomach, smash that like button, drop a comment if your grandma made these, and subscribe before we dive into something even more puzzling. Olive-stuffed prunes are next. Welcome aboard the olive-stuffed prune boat, where sweet meets salty in ways no one asked for, yet everyone remembered. This mid-century appetizer came from a time when hostesses were obsessed with contrast, texture, taste, color, and nothing said sophisticated quite like a dried fruit stuffed with a briny surprise. These little snacks were often passed around at cocktail parties, bridal showers, and yes, even holiday dinners. The recipe was simple, almost suspiciously so. Take a soft, sticky prune, pitted, of course, and insert a bright green pimento-stuffed olive right into its center. No sauce, no garnish. Just prune and olive. The end result looked like a tiny canoe, hence the boat, nickname in retro recipe circles. So why did people serve this? Believe it or not, it was considered a classy hors d'oeuvre. The sweetness of the prune was thought to elevate the olive's salty tang, creating a grown-up flavor experience. Some recipes even recommended chilling them before serving for that perfect chew. But let's be honest, most people probably popped one in their mouth and regretted it instantly. Still, in the 1940s and 50s, food was about novelty and showmanship. You weren't just feeding guests, you were impressing them. And what could be more impressive than a snack that confused every taste bud at once? Some hostesses tried to dress them up with toothpicks, mini paper sails, or parsley seaweed. Others doubled down and dipped them in gelatin. That's right, prune and olive jello. Love it or leave it. The olive-stuffed prune boat is a bizarre culinary time capsule, a symbol of how daring, and sometimes desperate, vintage appetizers could be. Think this one belongs in the never again category? Hit like, comment below if you've actually seen one in the wild, and subscribe, because next up, we're rolling into the liver-stuffed pinwheel train, and it only gets weirder. Up next, we swirl into something rich, round, and undeniably divisive, the liver pâté pinwheel. In mid-century America, liver wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Packed with iron, cheap, and readily available, it found its way into everything from casseroles to cocktail snacks. And the pinwheel? That was how you made liver party-friendly. Here's the blueprint. Spread a generous layer of liver pâté, sometimes whipped with cream cheese or butter, onto a flattened slice of white sandwich bread. Then roll it tightly, chill it until firm, and slice into elegant little spirals. Voila! You had yourself a finger food that looked like dessert and tasted like organ meat. For extra flair, some hostesses tinted the spread with beet juice for a rosy hue, or added chopped pickles, nuts, or even anchovy paste. Served on doily-lined trays with cocktail toothpicks, they gave the illusion of refinement, but often caused guests to pause mid-bite. So why did these pinwheels exist? It all goes back to thrift, nutrition, and presentation. Liver was a staple in frugal kitchens, and pinwheels were a stylish way to stretch small amounts of ingredients. They were seen as elegant economy, the illusion of luxury on a lean budget. Plus, in the 40s and 50s, pâté was exotic. French-sounding food meant class, even if it came from a can and smelled like grandma's purse. Were they delicious? That depends who you ask. For some, liver pâté brings back warm memories of holiday spreads and bridge clubs. For others, it's a one-and-done experience they'd rather forget. But no matter where you stand, the liver pâté pinwheel holds its rightful place among America's most forgotten and fearless appetizers. Feeling brave? Hit like, share your liver love or horror in the comments, and subscribe for more curious creations from culinary history. And coming up next, we're stuffing celery with peanut butter and topping it with raisins. You've been warned. Now we arrive at a snack that's part childhood memory and part mystery. It's the infamous peanut butter stuffed celery with raisins, or as many knew it, ants on a log. This crunchy creation became a household staple in the 1950s and 60s, especially among parents trying to sneak protein and vegetables into snack time. The formula was simple: one celery stalk, one smear of peanut butter, and a few raisins lined up like passengers on a tightrope. But here's the twist. While today it's mostly remembered as a kid's snack, back in the day, it was often served as a party appetizer. That's right. People brought trays of this to potlucks and luncheons with no irony whatsoever. Some even upgraded the presentation. Cream cheese instead of peanut butter, chopped walnuts sprinkled on top, or golden raisins for a fancier feel. What made it popular? Simplicity. It was cheap, nutritious, and easy to assemble, a trifecta of post-war snack wisdom. Plus, the combination of crunchy, salty, sweet, and creamy hit every part of the palate, even if not everyone was asking for it. Believe it or not, some vintage cookbooks recommended adding olives to the mix. Others layered cottage cheese first, then peanut butter, then raisins, as if celery were a vertical tasting platter. Some parents even dyed the peanut butter with food coloring to make it more exciting. But despite the many variations, the original version stuck. And to this day, it remains one of the most remembered and debated retro snacks of all time. Love it or loathe it, peanut butter stuffed celery with raisins is a time capsule of mid-century imagination and snack-based negotiation. Like what you're hearing? Tap that like button, share your weirdest celery combo in the comments, and subscribe for more odd eats from the past. Next up, we're heading underwater with sardine-stuffed deviled eggs. Just when you thought deviled eggs couldn't get any more devilish, the mid-century kitchen said, "Let's stuff 'em with sardines." Welcome to the world of sardine-stuffed deviled eggs, a dish that smells as bold as it tastes. This recipe made regular appearances at bridge luncheons, seaside socials, and any gathering where you wanted to leave a lasting impression, for better or worse. The process started simple: hard-boiled eggs, sliced in half, and yolks removed. But instead of just mixing those yolks with mayo and mustard, you'd mash and can sardines, oil-packed, finely chopped, and unapologetically fishy. Some versions added horseradish, capers, or lemon zest to brighten it up, while others just leaned in. Once whipped into a creamy, salty paste, the mixture was piped right back into the egg whites and topped with a slice of olive, a sprig of parsley, or, if you were truly fearless, an anchovy curl. To modern eyes and noses, this might sound like a dare. But in the 1940s and 50s, sardines were sophisticated. Rich in nutrients, affordable, and considered a smart hostess's secret weapon, they made their way into everything from canopy spreads to gelatin molds. Sardine-stuffed deviled eggs were seen as bold and worldly. And for some, they were genuinely delicious, creamy, briny, and packed with umami flavor. But let's be honest, not everyone at the party reached for seconds. Still, the dish had its fans. It was protein-packed, easy to make ahead, and certainly got people talking. Love them or leave them. These fishy little eggs are a shining and shimmering example of how adventurous mid-century cooking could be. If this one cracked you up or creeped you out, hit that like button, drop a comment if you've ever dared to eat one, and subscribe, because next, we're entering truly bizarre territory. Pickled Jell-O squares are on the menu. Just when you thought gelatin couldn't get any stranger. Allow me to introduce pickled Jell-O squares. Yes, this was real. Not a prank. Not a dare. This recipe came straight from the pages of 1950s and 60s homemaker magazines. A bright, wiggling tray of savory green Jell-O embedded with chopped pickles and onions. The base? Lime or lemon-flavored gelatin, chosen not for its sweetness, but for its shocking color and zest. Into that went diced dill pickles, pimento, shredded cabbage, sometimes even slivers of carrot. The mixture was poured into a rectangular mold, chilled until firm, and sliced into neat little cubes. Voila! Cocktail party salad. Why? Because in the post-war kitchen, gelatin was the great unifier. It was modern, clean, and visually dramatic. And when you suspended savory ingredients inside it, you weren't just making food. You were making art. Strange, salty, slightly twitching art. Pickled Jell-O squares were often served as appetizers or salad course starters. And some hostesses really went for it, topping them with dollops of mayonnaise, setting them on beds of iceberg lettuce, or placing them in tiered molds for visual flair. But let's be honest, to most modern palates, this is nightmare fuel. The sweet-tart clash of lime gelatin and briny pickle hits hard, and not always in a good way. Still, back then, it made sense. These were thrifty ingredients. Jell-O was shelf-stable, and pickles were a pantry staple. Combine the two, and suddenly you had a refreshing savory delight that impressed guests with its novelty and precision. It's the kind of dish that makes you appreciate how far and weird American cuisine has traveled. If this recipe wobbled your soul, hit like, comment if you've ever seen one of these on a buffet table, and don't forget to subscribe, because next up, we're rolling cheese, canned asparagus, and white bread into something truly unforgettable. Now let's talk about finger food that tried to be fancy, but smelled like the inside of a 1960s lunchbox. Behold, canned asparagus rolls with cheese spread. If you've never heard of this one, picture it. Soft, white sandwich bread, crusts cut off with precision, spread edge to edge with a processed cheese mixture, then rolled tightly around a single limp spear of canned asparagus. The entire roll was sliced into bite-sized rounds, and sometimes secured with a toothpick if it refused to stay rolled. Why canned asparagus? Because it was elegant in the post-war world. Fresh veggies were seasonal and often expensive. But canned asparagus? Soft, shelf-stable, and easy to mold into whatever shape your imagination or your party tray required. The cheese spread varied. Sometimes it was plain cream cheese, other times blended with cheese whiz or pimento cheese for a pop of color. A sprinkle of paprika or parsley flakes often finished the look. And if you were really showing off, a spritz of canned olive brine for that extra salty touch. This appetizer was served cold and neatly arranged on trays for bridge games, baby showers, or church socials. It was considered chic and effortless. But the reality? A strange combination of squishy, salty, and vinegary textures that left you wondering if it was meant to be eaten or just admired. Yet somehow people loved it. It had that nostalgic charm, that feeling of trying to be cosmopolitan on a canned goods budget. It's weird. It's wobbly. It's wrapped. And it's a reminder of a time when even the humblest ingredients were dressed up and given a seat at the table. If this one rolled you the wrong way, hit like, drop a comment with your own vintage snack horror stories, and make sure to subscribe, because up next, yes, you guessed it, hot dogs turned into sushi. just when you thought hot dogs had done it all. America gave us hot dog sushi, a curious collision of picnic food and exotic flair. This recipe came from the 1960s and 70s, when sushi was starting to appear in American food magazines, but still felt mysterious and foreign to most households. So, in true mid-century fashion, home cooks decided to Americanize it by replacing raw fish and seaweed with hot dogs and white bread. Here's how it worked. A slice of soft sandwich bread was flattened with a rolling pin until paper thin. A strip of processed American cheese was placed down the middle, followed by a halved hot dog. Then the whole thing was rolled up tightly, just like a sushi roll. Some versions were wrapped in plastic and chilled to set the shape. Others were toasted lightly in the oven for a golden crust. The final presentation? Sliced into little medallions, round, bite-sized, and oddly cute. A dollop of ketchup or mustard on top, served as the soy sauce. Was it real sushi? Not even close. But it was a hit at kids' birthday parties, school functions, and potlucks. It had all the novelty of sushi, minus the raw ingredients and cultural accuracy, which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly a top concern back then. It was part of a larger trend, borrowing ideas from other cultures, then reshaping them with all-American ingredients. Whether that was respectful or ridiculous depends on who you ask. Today, hot dog sushi lives on mostly in retro recipe books and ironic Pinterest boards. But back in the day, it was a conversation piece. Tacky? Maybe. Memorable? Absolutely. If this recipe rolled you into disbelief, hit like, comment below if your family ever served this strange fusion, and subscribe, because up next, we're throwing canned meat and tropical fruit on skewers. Yes, it's time for Spam and pineapple kebabs.